UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
You're listening to Star Trek Weekly News. I'm Tony Robinson. In this week's news, Anthony Rapp talks Discovery. And did Alexander Courage steal the Star Trek theme? All this and more coming right up. Well, hands up who loved this week's episode of Discovery. An oboe for Sharon. Okay, you can put your hands down now. It was an excellent episode. Fantastic. Hey, I just discovered that there is a show called The Ready Room, which is on StarTrek.com. And a lot of people will be wondering whether this is any connection with the Ready Room, which goes out on Trek FM. Well, sad to say no, but, you know, they're stealing a name. The Ready Room from Trek FM has been going quite a while longer. Anywho, Anthony Rapp was on that show, and he gave some insights and background information on what happened in the episode and where it might go from here. So let's hear from Anthony in this wonderful expose on what happens behind the scenes on Star Trek Discovery.
Joining us right now from New York. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're all set. So, of course, I want to talk about episode 4. You had some significant screen time with Jet Reno this time around. Yes. What was it like working with Tig Notaro?
She's awesome, hilarious, super smart. She's, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to talk to her yet or meet her. She kind of can't believe that she's on Star Trek. So she's just like, what am I doing here? But in the most joyful way. She's like, okay, I'll talk about science. Okay, I'll do things. And so she just has complete fun with everything that she gets asked to do. And so, to have the chance to play off of her and have our little banter and, and then have these really entertaining and fun chats between shots. It was a total pleasure. I was a big fan of her work as a comedian, and then also just a fan of her advocacy and her presence, and what she stands for. So she's been an incredible addition to our family, and I think that she wound up having even more fun than she thought she might. And she's still like, what am I doing here? I'm on Star Trek. What? So.
She's all about the Star Trek life now.
Yes.
That's awesome.
She has 2 sons with her wife, and I don't know if they both say this, but one totally gets the concept that she goes off to work on a spaceship and is very excited by that.
Oh,
they're
gosh.
like 4 or 3, something like that, really, really small, maybe even younger than. So they're like, "Oh, Mom, you're going to work on a spaceship again?" And,
Yeah, I can only imagine what that's like as a kid. Now, to take it back to episode 4, what was it like playing high with Tig? Was that an experience in and of itself? I'd imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, it was really funny. So much of the time when I'm hanging with her on the set, especially between takes, she's just very funny. She's like super deadpan. She tells stories that are very funny. And there would be times during certain takes when, if she goes up on a line, she has a lot of technobabble, which is not her forte.
Right.
So she would mess it up, but she never panicked about it. She would never freak out, but she would really make me laugh in how she would react to it. So at least when we were playing the scene where we were high with each other, I could let out a little more of the enjoyment factor and, giggle with her. 'Cause I found her, I think she's really funny in the show, but I think she's really funny off camera. So it was just a nice a nice opportunity to blend my
the two
pleasure.
worlds.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you are known as a Star Trek fan even before you joined the Discovery team. So what's it like to be part of the family now?
It's kind of crazy. I've been a real big nerd my whole life, a fan of Star Trek, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, comic books. But I really, until this happened in my life, until this came into my life as an opportunity to act in it, I truly never imagined that I would be a part of something like this as an actor. I thought I would always just be a fan of it. I would always be watching it on screen and be captivated and transported and just be able to, enjoy it from the outside. I'd never envisioned myself in it. So it's completely like pinch me crazy dream weirdness. At the same time, it feels really wonderful because I'm surrounded by incredible human beings, and we're very passionate about the work we do, and we have a lot of fun together on set, and we really care about each other as people and as artists. So it's just been a totally beautiful creative experience on top of everything else.
I can only imagine. Now, in this episode, we get to see a bit more of the Star Trek themes that we know and love, and of course you have your engineering problem-solving storyline. So what's it like to finally play out some of these classic Star Trek scenarios?
Well, I mean, it feels like this season, especially, we're getting into our groove of getting a little more familiar to people who are longtime Star Trek fans. I mean, all through season one, we were saying, or at least, when I would interact with people online and stuff, I would say, trust us, there's like a long game kind of thing going on. So, season one was so much about exploring, going through the valley of the shadow of death to come out into the light. Mm-hmm. And now that we're in the light and we've left the war behind and we're out of the mirror universe, we can start to demonstrate that this Star Trek that you know and love comes after the stories that we're telling, but we can keep planting the seeds. Okay, yeah, this is more familiar. So yes, the engineering problem solving, the sciencing our way out of situations, the coming together and bouncing off ideas, and really smart people bringing their entire capacity of intelligence to solve problems. That's getting more and more time and space on the season this year, and that feels really great to play. But I think it also feels that much more familiar and happy for longtime fans who, we asked them to trust us, and I believe that the trust is paying off in terms of yes, this does fit into the Star Trek in all sorts of ways. Not just the specifics of the story, but also the spirit.
Yeah, and speaking of the spirit, Stamets and Tilly obviously have a very special bond in this show. We actually have a GIF of you two, your characters high-fiving in one of those scenes, and we use it. I mean, I've been seeing it a lot on social media. I don't know if you have, but it's a very, heartwarming high-five and moment between you two. Can you talk about how Stamets and Tilly's relationship is going to be developing this season?
Well, I think it's already developed so much in these early few episodes. She's become his sounding board and kind of safe space in the wake of everything that's happened with Culber, with Hugh. And she's just got a really big open heart. So she's unafraid to kind of speak from her heart, and that penetrates some of Stamets's defenses and persnicketyness. So that and she's demonstrated enough. Also, Stamets needs people to show him that they're smart and capable. Doesn't have time for nonsense.
Right.
So she's also demonstrated that she's incredibly smart and capable. So on both levels, they're bonding and connecting. And then now I get to help her.
Yeah.
In a major way, and so there's just a lot of trust that's built up and a lot of care, and we get to help and save each other.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to see. Now, we learned a big thing this episode. Of course, Stamets has been traveling through the mycelial network a few times now, and it's apparently caused serious damage to this Joseph's native habitat that we learned of. And can you talk a bit about that big reveal and how it's affected your character?
Well, I mean, it's, to be fair, she's making a claim that we don't know exactly what the problem is. So it may be a matter of misunderstanding. We don't know yet, but I think that just the very possibility that there could be a problem because of this technology is incredibly upsetting to Stamets. I think he would want no part of anything that would be causing damage to beings or nature, if at all possible. Right. So yeah, it's a big deal, but it does, her claim may or may not be totally accurate. It may be a misunderstanding of what's happening. We don't know yet. Something tells me we're going to find out.
Oh, maybe the next episode coming.
Tells me.
Thoughtful thinking. Now, the most interesting thing for me anyways is that you guys obviously get to explore this whole fungi, spores, mushroom world, which is a complete mystery to me, but I guess I'd like to know what's the most interesting thing that you've learned in that world.
Well, I mean, I watched, there's a real Paul Stamets in our time right now, doing incredible work in mycology, and I watched a TED Talk that he gave, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, in which one of the very first things he says in the TED Talk is something like mushrooms can save the world. And then he went on to share some of the more incredible things that mushrooms and fungus and mycelia are doing on our planet, including he did this whole experiment with like toxic waste in which he seeded a pile of toxic waste with mycelia. And within a number of weeks, that pile of toxic waste had become non-toxic. The mycelia had been able to absorb that toxicity and become healthy, non-polluted grasses and plants and help, and mushrooms. Whereas other toxic waste piles that were seeded with chemical things, they were still sludge and terrible. So that's one of the things that was deeply impressive. But he also talked about in that TED Talk about mycelia, like if you're walking through the forest, underneath the forest floor is mycelia all throughout the whole forest, and that it actually, when you step here in the forest floor, the mycelia here communicate with the mycelia over here. So he talked about it in language that was like nature's internet.
Oh, wow.
That there's this direct correspondence, and that they can observe the mycelia actually trying to connect with other life forms and things. And the way that mycelia and fungus are part of the building block of all biology and all of that, and how they recycle matter and turn it into new matter, all of that is really fascinating. And I think it's real science as far as I can tell. And right. I love the ways in which Trek has always been a show that's taken real science and then extrapolated into, sometimes fantastical or, not yet discovered new ways of thinking, and yet certain other technologies that Trek has talked about have proven to be possible.
Right.
So it's in that grand tradition of using real science that gives rise to ideas that may or may not be ultimately real, but correspond with something that is being explored in our actual science today.
Right. Well, very well spoken, and I definitely encourage everyone to watch that TED Talks for the real Paul Stamets, lowdown on how spores work and how this interconnectivity between, living creatures work. But such a great job explaining that. I actually found that very fascinating. Now, I want to touch a bit. No, it was very, very interesting. What are some of the props that you guys have that I've seen a few displays of mushrooms in the background shots, and of course you have a CGI version, of course, in the engineering room. So can you speak a bit about that and let people in on that?
We have such an incredible props department anyway. Mario, who designs our props, like he just always is finding beautiful ways to make things look and feel as real as possible. We actually have most of our props are things we are actually holding, and are sometimes they augment them a little bit with some maybe light effects or things like that in post-production. But like there was that canister of Prototaxites Stellaviatori, which was the last of its kind towards the end of season 1. A beautiful canister that had I don't know what it's made of, but it looks and feels alive and real and alien, and it's got heft to it, the prop. And then the funny thing, I don't know if it was ever seen on camera, I can't remember, but in the back near when you're looking in engineering, there's the spore cube over here, and then there's like stairs up to here, and then there's like a wall, and you can kind of see like I don't know if it's the warp core, but there's like a thing back here. Over on the side, there are these drawers, and those drawers were filled with different kinds of mushroom props. I don't know if they ever got seen on camera, but that's the level of